Dave Morgan, Simulmedia. I would love to talk to you about your speaker series, the Happy Hour speaker series. What exactly is that?
It's basically a chance to bring together a lot of people from the industry, and we try to present speakers and a discussion around issues a lot of us are dealing with or talking about, that we can engage people here on a regular basis in an informal setting, have people maybe be a little more open than they might otherwise be, and do a lot of the kinds of things that you otherwise have to wait to go to a conference once or twice a year to be able to find and address. And in some cases, maybe talk about issues that are more specific and more time sensitive too.
How often do these speaker series appear?
We've done them at least once a month. Our plan now is to go up to twice a month. And we actually may have, there may be some months we'll do them weekly. So we're going to do them more. We've realized that there seems to be a bit of a vacuum in the New York media community, that there seems to be like social events and sort of salon get-togethers, but usually around specific conferences or moments in time, like when advertising week. And there hasn't been sort of, a friend, a good friend, Barry Fry, talks about this sort of it's our version of the Algonquin, kind of get together. And we don't think, love to be viewed at that level, but I think we've created an environment for people to get together and be both social and have discussions they might not otherwise hear, and really go across a range of topics. So it's not just companies talking about what they do, it's people talking about their careers, their approaches. We've had folks from the investment communities talk about what they see in the marketplace, how they see things change. And we're always open to trying to find new and interesting people to talk.
And who attends?
So it's a pretty broad range of folks. I would say all of them are connected to marketing, advertising, and media and technology in one degree or another. We have probably a good mix of folks that are more digitally centric. We have a number of people that are very television centric. We have people that are on the buy side, both client and agency. We have people that are sellers. We have technology suppliers. We have pundits, analysts. We have people that are consultants. So I think we have a pretty interesting mix. It's great to have an audience where you've got folks like Andrew Hayward, who was the president of CBS News for decades, in listening and talking. At the same time, you've got someone who's works at Bluefin, and someone who's at Kantar, and someone who is in sales at AMC, and someone who's a buyer at MediaStorm. So it's a pretty good mix and cross-section across all parts of the media ecosystem here in New York.
Why do them? Why Simulmedia? What do you hope to get out of it?
Well, we're believers, and I think we're voting with our feet, and that we think that there's inevitable change coming into the media industry, and in some cases it's going to be really significant. We're believers that this change is not predestined to happen a certain way. It's going to be the actions of companies and individuals that are going to determine what happens when sort of the digital advertising and media and technology, collides with a lot of the legacy businesses, particularly around television and video. And we think it's really important to talk about that. Part of it is we want to make sure we're at least part of the parade in thought leadership in the industry. I think that's important. I think it's important to take a discussion away from products and features and benefits and really talk about ecosystem issues. And we want to be part of the discussion. We don't want to miss the discussion because we weren't listening. And so that's a big part of it. Also, quite selfishly, we all spend a lot of time traveling to a lot of conferences and sometimes sponsoring things in different conferences, where we realize we could pull some of this together too, and it's not mutually exclusive. We'll always be part of a lot of industry events, but there's no reason we can't also create a forum or a venue to do it. And I would say for us, it's not always just the Q&A or the panels that we put on for 45 minutes or an hour, but it's the 2 hours of having a glass of wine or a beer with colleagues and friends, to do it in the networking. We've also really encouraged a lot of folks that are in between jobs and careers in the industry to be part of this, because it's a real good opportunity to connect with different people and opportunities.
What have been some of the past happy hours? Who were some of the guests and what were the discussions?
I think we've had folks like Steve Hasker over at Nielsen, and a lot of our discussion there was how does Nielsen see the changing dynamics and landscape in media, and what are they doing about it? And I think probably he surprised a lot of people, and I've had a number of comments about that session particularly, that it was the most un-Nielsen talk they've ever heard. And Steve was very open about the fact that they recognize it's a really changing landscape. They recognize some of their products. He talked pretty openly about their local products not being at the level that some should expect it, and that they were focused on fixing it. He talked pretty openly about how they saw competition in the marketplace and how they thought the competition was good and it was making them better. We've had Terry Kawaja, of the investment banker of Luma and the famous Lumascape, talked about his vision and future for the landscape and how he saw the market developing and who he thought the winners and losers would be. Where would we see a Samsung or an Apple? What would be the future for Sony, AT&T, a lot of the tech companies that want in? We've had some. In the holiday season, we had Eric Asimov, and we had a book party for his newest book on how to love wine, which was fun because we know that it's a big part of our industry, and I think he was really focused on how do you make wine accessible. We had a group of investors in the media and advertising ecosystem. Linda Gridley, the founder of Gridley & Company, a really important investment banker, boutique banker in direct marketing and marketing services. Sheila Spence from WPP, who is runs their corporate development programs and their investments. Brad Burnham of Union Square Ventures, the backers of Twitter and Zynga and Tumblr and Foursquare. And that was a really interesting discussion. It was actually even talking about sort of the future of Western civilization. So it can get a bit wider range than some people expect, but I think it's a lot of fun conversations and stimulating ones.
And what can we expect for topics in the future?
Well, we're interested in the community to talk to us about topics they'd like to have addressed. So I encourage anyone that may have any ideas to reach out to us. And my email's dave@simulmedia.com or at Dave Morgan NYC on Twitter. And we're always interested in what kinds of speakers and topics we can talk about. We have over the next couple months, we're particularly going to be highlighting folks in the media buying and at the client level. Folks that are, today we have Maureen Bossetti, who runs national broadcast TV at Optimedia. We have David Cohen, who runs media at We have Robert Tass, who runs digital marketing at Chase. So JP Morgan Chase. So there's some of the ones we have coming up over the next month and a half. So we're going to see a little bit more of that. We think that that's the top of the food chain, and the ecosystem really wants to know what does it need to do to better serve the needs of marketers and the agencies that are deploying the capital, and how are they thinking about things. We will do some more fun ones. We're talking yesterday about doing a session about prepping you for Cannes and knowing where the hot spots, how do you know to avoid the worst rosé, how do you hold the Magnum or the Jeroboam, where's the best nook or cranny on the Carlton terrace to position yourself, where are the good boats to hang out on. So we're going to do some fun things like that. And some of that is actually to make some of the things that are more accessible. Our industry's changing a lot, and it's democratizing. And so things that were sort of in a limited few are now, the ANA Masters of Marketing had 2,000 people this past year. And that's a conference that I think 5 years ago only had 200. So there's a lot of awareness that people don't have about the nuances and how these things work. Another area that we're going to try to talk about more is careers and career paths. We view that it's essential as a startup that's growing. I mean, we have probably 53, 54 people today. A year ago, we were probably 22 or 24. A year from now, we're probably 100. And we need to find talent. And we have the same issue that folks like Buddy Media have, or Tremor Media, or a lot of the companies that are growing in this area. And that means tapping into non-traditional sources for talent, looking for people that are not necessarily just part of advertising and marketing, looking for people. I mean, we're looking for statisticians and people with data. We're also trying to make sure we can promote folks' successes. A big thing here, and we'll make a theme of some of our sessions going forward, are promoting careers for women in the business. Our Chief Technology Officer, Allison Lowry, is unusually for this industry a woman, and she's been running engineering for me for 3 different companies, and we want to find ways we can promote and find folks like her in a lot of other companies, so that the women can see there's a lot of other career paths they might not have otherwise seen. And so I think you're going to see a little bit more career focus as well.
I think concentrating on career and the next generation is incredibly important. How do you even start to let students know in college, where they may not be able to even study classes in our industry?
Yeah, I think one of the first things we have to realize is that as professional managers and business owners, a lot of times we want the schools to pre-prepare everybody so that they give us a pipeline and we can hire people that have the disciplines and have trained. But if we step back and look at our own paths and look at our peers and colleagues in the industry, we find none of them came through that way. I'm chairman of the IRTS, what was the International Radio and Television Society, which is formed in 1939, I think. And we have a very big fellowship program to bring people out of school and put them into paid fellowships in different media companies. And in most cases, we recruit folks that are actually come with those disciplines in mind. And it was interesting, we had a little round table around the board maybe last month about our own backgrounds. And if you look at like the real icons in our business, Herb Braniff and Henry Schleif, and folks that are like we all realize most of us were liberal arts folks that had a real aptitude or a desire or an energy or an interest, and it could be in data, it could be technology, it could be in media. And so I think one of the ways we need to make it all more accessible, and I think that we, for example, always try to invite interns and the fellows, when the IRTS fellows are in for the summer, to have them come to our events, because the more people realize that we don't have this unique arcane industry that if you don't know the language coming out of college you can't break in, they need to know that.
And what were some of the insights that were gleaned from past series?
I think there have been a number of them. I think that sometimes one of the nice things when you have people and you can talk to them for half hour or 40 minutes and have it open and unscripted, or you sometimes find the reasons behind the reasons. And so I think, like as we talked about a little bit with Nielsen and Steve Hasker, I think to a number of people in the audience, Nielsen was humanized in a way they really didn't know it before. And it also didn't hurt that there were half a dozen folks from Nielsen here too that were part of the networking as well. I think on the investor panel, we saw that the notion of investor depends on your point of view, and that the issues for the bankers were different than the issues for the strategic investors and different for the issues of the financial investors. And what was great was I didn't have to ask them any questions. They drew it out from each other in talking about their different motivations and why they backed certain companies and what some of the challenges were. I think that one of the things we've seen with, I mentioned Terry Kawaja of Luma, is that the Lumascape seems really, really crowded, but one of the things he did, which was really fun, was he actually took the Lumascape and reduced it down to the television and video world. And 98% of the Lumascape went away. And his point was that the digital world has this incredible crowded space around a not that big of a pie. If you look at display advertising relative to television, which is a pie that is many multiples bigger, it has very few players and is very consolidated. And so I hope the kinds of insights we're bringing out are we're getting a couple layers below things. And then the fun thing is, because we have the happy hours actually start before and after, sometimes that leads to a little bit more openness and discussion than others might otherwise be inclined to get into. But it also lets people continue the conversations that they hear.
Have any of the insights that you've gleaned from these salons changed the way you do business or changed an attitude?
Yeah, certainly. I think that, and it's not always just what people say in the questions and answers or the panel, and it can be things that come from the conversations afterwards. We're learning a lot. I mean, I've been in media for almost 25 years, 22, 23 years, but I've only been in TV for 3.5. And that means that and my colleagues as well, we're babies, and we're learning so much every day. And I have a much better understanding of, how a currency plays in a media industry, in an established media industry today than I did before, from some of the insights like with the Steve Hasker session. I've worked with venture investors quite a bit, but I never actually listened to the dynamic between the bankers and the strategic investors and how they see things, and it changes probably how I'm thinking a bit about some of our strategic opportunities going forward. Some of the back and forth questions that I've heard among the group that we had, it's all these groups. I mean, I've learned a lot. I mean, John Mandel has been a regular at these, and anyone that knows John knows he's got opinions. He's not afraid to voice them, and while they tend to have very sharp edges to them, they tend to have a lot of truth and insight packed in them. And when you've got people like that asking questions and bringing things out, and so I don't know that I could pick out a list of here's the 10 things we did differently, but I could say for sure there's 10 things that we're doing differently because of it. And it's probably not just me, and what I would sort of say we try to govern from above. It's probably made things a lot more accessible to my team, and that's a really big part of it, the fact that the folks that I work with have a chance to be exposed to people where I'm more external than most of them are. So I believe it's had a significant impact.
So Dave, can you talk a couple of future ones and how people can join?
Sure, certainly. So some of the speakers we have coming up over the next month or two, David Cohen, who runs media buying at Robert Tass, who runs digital marketing and marketing analytics at JP Morgan Chase, and anyone that wants to come, come to our website, simulmedia.com. They can email marketing@simulmedia.com, or just email me, Dave@simulmedia.com, and we'll make sure to forward an invitation to them, and we can have them on board. If people have particular topics or things they would like to hear, we'd love to hear about it. We're always interested in trying to bring more insights and make sure that we're being responsive to what's happening. I mean, certainly we have a certain amount of editorial discretion that we're trying to drive into things that we think that are particularly relevant, but would love to hear ideas from folks as to what they would like us to do. And we're fortunate that we have a venue. Our space was the former Brooks Brothers factory down here on Broadway and Bond, and so we have a venue that suits itself well to these kinds of events and presentations and happy hours.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.